Sunday afternoon. I'm coming to you with two things on my mind. The first of which is this. At the end of my conversation with Jamie on Tuesday, the power went out. And it did not return until about 4 hours ago today, which is to say, what's ahead of me for the next 24 to 36 hours is somewhat furiously trying to catch up on what I've missed. But I trust that you all have been busy and, as always, enormously intelligent and thoughtful and productive and constructive. So I look forward to the sprint ahead of me. And I will have to circle back with those of you who had meetings with me scheduled for Wednesday and Thursday. You know who you are, and try to set them up again for the coming week. Without power, I wasn't able to do conferences, but nor was I able to communicate with you. So glad it's over. Whatever in the freezer is lost, and that's painful, but I'm glad it's over. The other thing on my mind is I wanted to say something about dialogue, to sort of give you the bit of instruction that was most useful to me. And it goes as follows, that there are three, and you might want to write this down, there are three kinds of dialogue in this scheme. One is expository, and the second would be responsive, and the third would be non-responsive. And they are offered to you in that order in sort of ascending. So the elaborate way to put it is that expository dialogue is generally not good. It is the kind of dialogue that soap operas traffic in. For example, I just got off the phone with Mom. You remember Mom, who was kidnapped last week and held for ransom until I had to pay for it. And so it's dialogue that the characters would know or not need to share, but is designed to do the expository work that catches the audience up. So that's expository dialogue. Responsive dialogue, which exists in the world, but because it is in direct response, each character in the dialogue is responding directly to the previous speaker. It doesn't present us with the opportunity for forward movement, right, for that feeling of dynamism. But also, and you will recognize this when you see it on the page, but also when you have actual conversations with actual people, it also just feels stilted and artificial. And if you want to try this out, have a conversation on the phone or with somebody close to you, in proximity to you, in which you respond only to what they had said most recently. And watch how quickly it gets irritating, but also experience how false it feels. The third kind, non-responsive dialogue, is the best kind for the following reasons. One, it gives a scene the opportunity to progress, has a built-in dynamism that is character developing, but also scene developing. Second, it feels like actual conversation. And if you want to test that out, reach out to somebody that you are close to and watch in a normal ongoing dialogue, watch how little of that exchange is responsive and how most of it is non-responsive. And I'm going to give you an example of this from Claire Sestanovich's Objects of Desire, because so much of what she does on the page is so quick, is so smart, and the dialogue is just another example of it. So in this very, very brief exchange, the characters who are speaking are a woman named Debbie and her husband Dana. Debbie is on edge. She's preparing to have a hysterectomy, and she has just been visited by her neighbor, who is unnamed, who has also had a hysterectomy and has tried to be consoling to Debbie by saying, it's not a big deal. It's like having the garage cleaned out, right? And she goes on to say something about how she felt so much better afterward. So Debbie is now reporting about this conversation with the neighbor to her husband. And she says, the garage? My uterus housed human life, not a Honda. To which the husband says, a Ford. She drives a Ford. Now, if you're reading that on the page, a couple of things happen. First of all, it's funny, right? It's funny at the husband's expense how out of touch he is with what's happening in his wife's life and what's happening sort of in her emotional life. And his sort of failure is comic, is experienced comically. But more than that, for our purposes, Debbie, is speaking about the thing that is most pressing on her mind, most pressing in her life at that moment. And the husband's response is similarly about what's most on his mind at that moment. That's how we register him as out of touch, right? What's on his mind are cars, right? And the difference in the values that they ascribe to their emotional states is what we experience as funny. One that's intense, one iteration. The house, my uterus housed human life, not Honda, right? There's an intensity of emotion in which he is diffusing by not reading the signal very well and responding out of a very different agenda. So this is a long way of saying that non-responsive dialogue, what makes it good is that in every instance, the character is speaking out of his or her agenda. So we have an experience of character development. When the husband speaks, we know what it is that's on his mind, and we know what it is that he gets or doesn't get about what his wife is experiencing. And we get sort of Debbie's ramped up emotional life about what's on her mind. So there it is. Expository, which explains, typically for the reader, bypassing any sort of pretense of actual exchange between characters. Responsive, which is between the characters, but is sort of flat and artificial feeling. And non-responsive, which has a lot of energy, does a lot of work characterologically, and feels real, as they say.